Good evening, I'm Lisa Townsend, your Police and Crime Commissioner, and I would like to welcome you to our online Policing Your Community event for Spelthorne. One of my roles as your Police and Crime Commissioner is to represent your voice on policing to the force, and this is an opportunity for you as well to hear about the work that Surrey Police are doing right across the county, but also where you live. I'm joined this evening at our studio at Surrey Police HQ, Mount Brown in Guildford, by Chief Constable Tim Meyer and also by your local Borough Commander, Inspector Matthew Walton. We carried out a series of in-person events before Christmas in all 11 boroughs across Surrey. We were in Staines on the 1st of November, but we wanted to provide an opportunity for those of you who weren't able to get there or weren't able to attend a meeting in person to be able to hear what the Chief Constable and your local Borough Commander have to say, and also an opportunity for you to ask the questions that you want to ask about policing in our county, but also policing in Spelthorne in particular. You'll be hearing from all three of us about the current priorities for the force, and there's going to be a chance, of course, for you to ask questions. We are going to do our very best to answer as many of these questions as possible. Anything that we don't get to immediately this evening, we will endeavour to answer later. So please do pop any questions you have into the comment box and we will get to them if we can. So, as your Police and Crime Commissioner, it is my role to hold the Chief Constable and the force to account for the service that you receive. Tim Meyer is now about 8 months into role and is going to talk a little bit about his plan shortly. It is a really important time for policing across our county, thanks to the work that Surrey Police has done to recruit our fair share, actually more than our fair share, of the government's extra 20,000 police officers, which has come thanks to your council tax contributions over recent years. It means that Surrey Police has now grown by 395 officers, and that means that the police in Surrey is the biggest it's ever been. It also means that we have a much younger workforce and that it is going to take time for them to be fully trained and so that they are properly out and about in our communities, which I know is what most of you want to see. As well as holding the force to account, it's also my role as your Police and Crime Commissioner to put together the Police and Crime Plan. The key priorities in the plan are protecting people from harm, working with residents so that you feel safe, preventing violence against women and girls, ensuring safer Surrey roads, and strengthening the relationship between Surrey Police and you residents. In the last year, my office has awarded over £5 million to local services, and this includes more funding than ever before for preventing violence against women and girls. We've also been actively working on the force to improve the response you receive about something that you tell us is really important, which is antisocial behaviour, and I know the Chief Constable is going to talk about that a bit, and also to improve the response that you receive when you contact us on 101. That's the non-emergency number. On a national level, I've taken the lead on issues including transport safety and also on the policing response to mental health, something that is really important and is a really important part of making sure that the police are there for you, doing what only they can when you need them. And again, I know the Chief Constable, who is taking the lead in Surrey on this, is going to talk a bit about it. Now, Surrey Police is an absolutely fantastic organisation, but we are facing higher demand than ever before. As the Police and Crime Commissioner, I oversee the Surrey Police budget and all of our assets, and that includes setting the amount of council tax that you pay towards policing. I have to balance the cost pressures that we all face with my goal to provide the Chief Constable with the resources that he needs in order to maintain the service you receive. The savings include finding a further 17 to £20 million over the next 4 years, and it's not going to be easy. It's really difficult asking the public for more money. I know that whether you're a household, a business or an organisation like policing, we are all facing cost pressures, and so it's a really difficult thing to do. But the Chief Constable is going to talk to you very shortly about his plan for the force and concentrating in particular on what I know matters to all of you, which is fighting and preventing crime and making sure that you are safe. I believe that the plan is going to significantly boost the service to all of our communities. But in order to achieve it, we have to maintain appropriate funding for the force. And that is why I have to think incredibly carefully about long-term funding and those plans. So if you haven't had a chance to do so already, I would like to invite you to fill out our council tax survey. You can find the details of it on the website, but also at the QR code, which will flash up on the screen shortly. So you can go directly to the survey there. It will take you less than 5 minutes to fill it out, and we would really appreciate your views. It asks you to consider whether you would support a £13 a year rise, 10, 11, 12 a year, or a figure under £10. Now, an increase of between £10 and £13 would mean that Surrey Police will be able to almost keep pace with inflation and keep any cuts to a minimum. Whilst the maximum increase of £13 would provide the Chief Constable with most of the resources that he needs in order to achieve his plans, Surrey Police will still need to find at least £17 million of savings. It is incredibly important that we make every effort we can to make efficiencies, and the force is undergoing a transformation programme that's designed to make sure we are giving the very best value for money to you, who are taxpayers. Your contributions through council tax make an enormous difference to what we're able to do and to the service that our hard-working officers and our staff are able to provide. For every £1 of the precept set, Surrey is funded by an extra £500,000, so it really is incredibly important. Your contribution makes an enormous difference. You can scan the QR code, as I said, in order to take part in the survey. And I hope that you will be able to hear from our Chief Constable, you'll be able to hear from your Borough Commander, and I hope that having listened to them, you'll see why I think it's so important that we are able to maintain funding at the levels that we've been able to, so that the Chief Constable can carry out his plan. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Chief Constable Tim Meyer, who is going to talk a bit about his plan for the force, and then after we've heard from your Borough Commander, I will take questions.
Thank you, Policing and Crime Commissioner. So I'm going to summarise as simply as I can the main points of our plan. Overall, what I want to do is make sure that we are fighting crime and protecting people. And those points might seem rather obvious, as you would expect the police to be doing that. But I do think it's important to restate our focus on those things which only we can do, and to ensure that we do them as well as we possibly can. I want us to make sure that we are working hard really to earn public trust and confidence, because without your trust and confidence, we don't get the information, the intelligence and the evidence we need to identify where crime is going on and how it is that we can solve it and bring offenders to justice. So our overall vision is to strive to earn trust and confidence and to fight crime and protect people. And pursuant to that vision, we have 10 discrete missions, which I'll talk about now. The first is to prevent crime and solve problems. Now, Surrey Police has a really strong tradition in this area. We've rightly, over the years, attracted praise from the Inspectorate in respect of our crime prevention and problem solving with partners, and indeed officers and staff have even been given prestigious awards in this respect. But my job now is to think about how it is that we can direct that problem solving focus on the areas which we really need to attend to. And the first and most prominent of these, as the Policing and Crime Commissioner has said, is violence against women and girls. We know that in respect of violence against women and girls, we see women targeted in the course of their ordinary lives, whether that's leaving their home, going out for the evening, at work, or in the course of moving in with someone or being married or within a relationship. And it's absolutely vital, therefore, that because women and girls are more likely to be victims in the course of the very things which people need to pursue as human beings, that we take our responsibility really to bear down on those who abuse women and girls in those circumstances. For example, domestic abuse. We know that's where the most vulnerable and the most dangerous are together behind closed doors, and it's absolutely vital that officers who respond to these cases take the opportunity to ensure the victim is protected, the suspect arrested, and the case thoroughly investigated, and the offender brought to justice. And we're already seeing, I'm pleased to say, significant improvements in the response to domestic abuse, relating both to the rate of arrest and also the rate of prosecution. We also need to work with the Crown Prosecution Service to improve the quality of our investigation and prosecution of sexual offences. The rate of charge and conviction in relation to these crimes is too low, and we've adopted new practices to ensure that we improve the quality of service that we provide to victims and take a really suspect-focused approach to ensure that wherever possible we can bring the offender to justice. We've also taken innovative practice from elsewhere in policing and are already applying it in Surrey. Operation Shield is an initiative that we've tested in other parts of the county, where officers expert in detecting behaviour which is at odds with what one would expect on the nighttime economy, identify dangerous perpetrators who've travelled to an area with the intention of targeting the vulnerable, and we've seen great success with that in its first trials. We need to investigate crime thoroughly. Surrey Police does not enjoy currently a good position in relation to other forces in respect of how good we are at bringing offenders to justice. We are right down at the bottom of the table of forces for charging offenders, and I'm determined that we will improve in that respect. That's why we've seen a focus on shoplifting, for example. We have people often not paid a great deal, working shifts in local shops, providing essential services, who need to enjoy the protection of the police and who in recent years haven't done so in the way that we would wish. And we are now determined to arrest many more shoplifters and bring those to justice. It might be that the shoplifter is motivated by feeding a drug habit, or perhaps working as part of an organised crime group, or maybe addressing a particular need owing to some sort of deprivation. But that in the first instance is not for the police to consider. We need to focus on responding to the call, making sure that we bring the person to justice, and then deciding along with the CPS and the court what the best option is. So I'm determined that we investigate crimes such as shoplifting, burglary, fraud, violence and many others even better than we have in the past, and see our rate of charges improve and increase. Where we've given in-person talks across the boroughs, antisocial behaviour has very often been a concern, and we will work across the county to identify the most troublesome antisocial behaviour hotspots and make sure that we can then be held to account for bringing those areas under control. And at our in-person meeting at Staines, we heard of some very real concerns in respect of some extremely unpleasant behaviour which we need to deal with in order that people feel safe. We want to make sure we are providing outstanding victim and witness care. Very often in cases such as domestic abuse, child abuse and sexual offences, the victim is also the only witness, and therefore it's vital that we provide the best service we can to keep that victim on board with the investigation as we rely on their evidence to bring the offender to justice. Over the last few years, there have been a number of notable cases where trust and confidence in the police has suffered as a result of the behaviour of serving officers. In Surrey Police, we're determined to make sure that we bear down very heavily on misconduct, especially as it relates to the abuse of authority for improper sexual purposes and dishonesty, to make sure that officers are well vetted and that we act on complaints from the public and reports from within the service to ensure that we are addressing misconduct extremely robustly. We need a diverse workforce, and we need a diverse workforce not only because we want to be representative of the communities, but also because it's a really competitive employment market. And we need to make sure that we're accessing talents and abilities from every section of the community in whom there is potential to serve as the best call handlers, police officers, community support officers and forensic specialists. As the Policing and Crime Commissioner has said, we need to save money. Policing is no different from other organisations. We are subject to pressures such as inflation, interest rates and pay increases, and we have a substantial sum of money to save within our annual operating budget every year over the course of the next few years. I make clear to my officers and staff that the money which has been entrusted to us to spend must be spent to the greatest possible value. That money could have gone elsewhere in government, into health or education or social care. It's been given to policing, so we have to spend it to the very best possible good. And that means making sure that our contracts, our processes, our information technology are all operating as efficiently as possible, so that the money we spend can be spent most on the services that we provide to you. My plan sets out our determination to be there for everyone who needs us and to put serving you before any self-interest which we might have. Police officers and police staff see material every day which most people don't see in a lifetime. They run to things which many people would run from. They do things which many people could not or would not do. It's really important to me that we continue in the best traditions of British policing, of serving in this selfless way. But that means we need to respond promptly. We need to answer the phone quickly and get to you quickly when you need us. We need to be with the public when things are for you at their worst. We need to be very much at our best. But there has been concern in recent years about the amount of time which officers have had to spend dealing with people in mental health crisis where there isn't necessarily a crime for the officer to deal with. There are a number of reasons for this. Policing is the service of last resort, and of course we will go whenever we're needed to address a real and urgent risk to someone's life. But whilst we're dealing with people in mental health crisis, we're not responding to burglary, domestic abuse, or many of those other things which only the police officer can deal with. So we're working hard with our partners to introduce the Right Care, Right Person scheme, which will ensure that those in mental health crisis get the service from health professionals that they need when they need it, and that they don't instead rely on the service of police officers, which might not be the best for them and stops us from getting on with those other important things which only we can do. We need to make sure that we are resilient and prepared, whether in responding to protest or policing major events such as the Epsom Derby. And therefore, my senior team and I are paying a lot of attention to the sorts of things which we need to consider in order to ensure that we're prepared to serve you in the most testing of times, whether that's a major incident, a critical incident, protest, or helping other colleagues elsewhere in the country with something they might have to deal with. And finally, policing is a tough and stressful job, and officers often work long hours. Staff might go without sleep, and it can be a really tough profession to be in. And therefore, we're working to ensure that we keep our officers and staff as healthy, fit and safe as we can, in the face of all the risks they have to deal with, in order that we have the most robust and resilient crime-fighting workforce we can to serve you. So that's about all I have to say about our plan for now, and I'll hand on to Matt.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. I'm Matt Walton. I'm your Borough Commander for Spelthorne. I just want to take a quick moment, similar to when we had the live event last year, just to go through what your Spelthorne neighbour team looks like and what it feeds into, and some of the work that we've been doing. So what is the Spelthorne neighbourhood team? Essentially, we're there to be proactive problem solvers, resolve those longer term issues, and engage with the community as much as possible to find out what's really going on and what's really causing concerns. As you can see there is a team of myself, my 2 sergeants, we have an ASB officer, we have 2 youth engagement officers, 10 PCs and 6 PCSOs. The PCs and PCSOs are both all dedicated to sort of sub-areas within the borough, being Ashford and Stanwell and Staines, so they can get a bit more involved in that local level engagement. We are still recruiting PCSOs. We're hoping to achieve a full complement of 10. So that you can go online, and there are other ways of being able to apply, so please look to apply to be a PCSO as well as a PC. And what our team does is, as you can see there, is we feed into a whole wide variety of other parts of policing. So it's not just those officers as policing Spelthorne. You also have your response teams, your investigation teams, you have your intelligence teams, you have your rural crime teams. There are such a variety of policing that we do in Surrey Police, but we're part of that sort of first initial engagement with yourselves to give you that sort of face of policing, so that you should know your local officers. Hopefully you're regularly looking on our Facebook site to look at our upcoming Meet the Beat events, where we can meet with you face to face, and other events where we can come and talk to you. So that's pretty much what our neighbourhood team is. And as I say, we're looking at resolving those longer term issues and trying to make the community feel and look safer, especially with engagement with our partners, such as with the council or housing or other areas as well. So it's a holistic approach beyond just the police responding to something. So that's pretty much what we're looking at with regards to the team. So what have we been up to in the past year? So some of the successes that we've had, we've done 20 plus warrants last year. Of these, 18 were successful in finding drugs, and 17 resulted in a total of 16 arrests, 9 of which are currently remanded into prison. So I know drugs is a particular concern for people in Spelthorne, so that's some of the work we've done around there. But also I'm very keen to make sure that we are diverting people away from those becoming that criminal. So we've also got Positive Futures, which basically work directly with teenagers to identify areas which makes them feel unsafe and finding solutions to improve their area. And we've recently done the similar with the violence against women and girls, going to the schools and asking a survey there to find out where those children are feeling unsafe in their areas, so we can really get a good idea of where I can best target those resources. We're also working on other things such as Active Surrey, Knoll Green Boxing Club are particularly good working with us with regards to our most at-risk children, and our YEOs, our youth engagement officers, are working hard to find other things that we can help divert those most at risk of being exploited or being exposed to criminality, and finding other avenues for them away from that. On a more crime note with regards to shoplifting, as the Chief Constable said, we've got a business watch that's been set up now in Shepperton, which is directly speaking with regular meetings which we have with the shop owners and such like, to find out where they're most struggling. And we're looking, already begun implementing one in Ashford, which hopefully will feed into a better understanding and a better ability to respond to the issues that the businesses are having in those areas, as well as the public when we meet with them at Meet the Beat. So, some of our priorities. The Chief has already spoken about some of those priorities, and some of the more priorities that you've spoken to us about, that you'd like us to be interested in, and also things that I'm concerned about. Building trust and confidence, making you feel like you can trust us. I know it's a national issue, but it's something that we're working hard on. Hotspot police patrols, that means using my resources that I've got effectively and finding the right places for them to be in the right place at the right time, rather than a generic scattergun approach. We want to be targeted in our response. Proactive policing operations, warrants, other targeted operations which we've already done, improving our community engagement. Hopefully you've seen over the Christmas period some of the 24 days of Christmas that we did, or leading up to Christmas, as part of an advent calendar, looking at some of the regular things that we're doing, but we're carrying that through into the new year with more Meet the Beat events where we can actually physically come and see you and speak to you, but also hopefully some online events as well. ASB, I know that's a very big concern of the community, having spoken to them, particularly in areas like Ashford. We are working hard to address those and find out where those sort of key individuals who are causing the most ASB and are basically guiding that antisocial behaviour, so we can target them as the sort of the ringleaders, for want of a better word. Problem solving, I've already said that. Long term, finding solutions for issues that are ingrained within the community. Making public places safer with regards to our focus on violence against women and girls, and also on acquisitive crime, which I know not just shoplifting but also theft from vans is a particular concern for people, and also burglaries as well, residential burglaries is another area that we're looking at with regards to focusing our policing operations. So that's pretty much what we've been working on as regards to our priorities. My hope is that you're excited to see those results, and the hope is that you'll come out to those community events and come and speak to us and tell us what your issues are so that we can address them for you. We really want to hear from you, not just reporting crime. We want you to tell us what your issues are, where you're feeling unsafe, because it's more than that. And my team can then work with our partners to hopefully make Spelthorne a safer place for you guys to live.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt, for covering that. I really appreciate it. We've got some questions coming in. If you do have a question for myself, for the Chief Constable or for the Borough Commander, please do type them in the comments box and we will get to as many of them as we can. One of the first questions that's come in is actually raised at the in-person event when we met on the 1st of November. And it's around concerns that were raised about drug dealing and dangerous riding of e-scooters, specifically in Ashford and in Staines. And we just wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that and what's happened.
Yeah, so since that event, where we spoke about, when we talk about drug dealing, let's talk about drug dealing first of all. When those who were at the event would have seen that I had on the briefing slide there, we had completed 13, I believe it was, 13 drugs warrants. Since that event, which only happened just over a month, 1st November, just a few months ago, we have obviously completed those additional eight warrants, all focused around drug dealing, specifically around areas such as Ashford and Stanwell are particular areas, and that's had an impact with regards to that. There are some other operations that we're still planning, and that's not going to stop just because we've done those warrants. Doesn't mean I stop now and I don't do anything more. We carry on that work. We carry on the work with regards to further engagement work that we can do beyond that. We've been quite successful in our closure orders, which are using the ASB legislation to either provide a partial or full closure. It's quite legalese wording. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but obviously people can look that up on the ASB legislation. We've also recently been successful in using similar legislation with regards to brothels as well, which we know can also attract similar levels of ASB as well. So we're using closure orders with regards to specifically for those areas. We have done a couple of operations with regards to the e-scooters. We were successful in seizing, I think it was about 5 or 6 of those e-scooters over that period over those operations and since. It's something we need to obviously look at again because now it's been Christmas. Sometimes people will have bought those presents for their children, hoping that they're going to use them because obviously they should be using them in a private area or private fields or whatever. But obviously looking at it again, because I know that doesn't go away, and so it's something that we're still going to be working on with future operations.
Thank you very much. Another question that was asked ahead of this meeting is what is being done, and Chief Constable, this might be one that you can help with, to make online reporting easier, with specific reference to the amount of time it takes to provide some of the information that could potentially be repeated if it's not the first time that an incident has happened. So I guess that's somebody has made reports about something, for example, antisocial behaviour, and they're contacting us online to avoid having to repeat all of the earlier information.
Yes, thank you. So we mentioned at the in-person event the the limitations of the national reporting system in this respect. But Surrey does have quite a good set of systems relative to other forces in respect to the range of different ways that people can access our services, whether that's through the emergency route, regular telephone 101 or digital 101. We have, since the introduction of a new system, we are working hard to develop ways of ensuring that when we have a repeat caller, the information which might pertain to that caller's vulnerability or previous incidents are more readily available to the handler in order that they can deal immediately with the issues at hand. There are some limitations in the national recording system in respect of how much people have to duplicate the information they give us, which I can't do a great deal about, but we are working as a priority to ensure that where people make contact with us via other means, the call handler, whether that's digitally or on the telephone, is more readily able to access information to reduce the extent to which members of the public or the callers have to go through everything, which I imagine is particularly frustrating if you're a repeat victim of antisocial behaviour, for example. I don't know if there's anything you can add to that, Matt.
No, I mean, no.
Okay, thank you very much. Another resident in Ashford asked, can Chief Constable say whether the planned savings, so the transformation work that we're doing, will impact on the number of police officers in our communities? I think some reassurance there.
Well, I can provide very strong reassurance that there won't be any impact on the number of police officers. However, the way that the budget is set up means that the great majority of our spend goes on staff. And whilst there is a cast iron commitment in respect to the number of police officers, it's not only police officers who are providing vital operational services. Often people think that those who aren't police officers and in the police are somehow in back office non-operational functions. Actually, they're very often providing crucial operational services, whether that's handling emergency calls, gathering forensic evidence, or supporting investigations into crimes against vulnerable people. And those who aren't in operational roles are similarly in vital work which frees up the front line to provide direct services to the public. Now, I'm determined that whether it's police officers or police staff, we'll do everything we possibly can to ensure that we find savings in our systems, our processes, our contracts, in order that we don't have to reduce the number of people in the organisation who we value enormously because of the vital services and the because of the vital service that they're providing to the public and the commitment that they provide to the role. So that's my determination in respect of the saving programme, but I can't pretend that that's going to be easy. However, the public should be reassured that we have people working very carefully with colleagues not only in Surrey but also in Sussex Police and elsewhere to ensure we're doing everything we possibly can to make those savings without affecting the actual services we provide.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief Constable. A topic that's coming up, that has come up an awful lot, and maybe you could both address this in terms of county-wide and then more locally in Spelthorne, which is what we're doing around shoplifting.
Thank you. So I mentioned in my talk at the start that shoplifting is a real area of focus for us at the moment. It might be said that in recent years, perhaps even over the last decade, police hadn't responded to shoplifting in the way that we might have done in the past. It could be said that that was because we were focused, understandably, on crimes affecting the vulnerable, particularly things such as domestic abuse, stalking, harassment and sexual offences. But I understand the concern on the part of the public when they witness shoplifting happening in their local stores. We rely on local shopkeepers to provide essential services on which communities rely. We know that people who work in our local stores often do so for a modest wage, and it's very important to me that they are and feel protected. So we have very much intensified our approach to shoplifting. We're determined to ensure that we follow up lines of inquiry, that the suspects who are identified are arrested and brought to justice. And we saw the first of our major operations in Surrey Police just before Christmas focused very deliberately on shoplifting, which featured precise targeting of the most prolific offenders, a great number of arrests and charges, and lots of work with our local stores to think how shoplifting could be more easily prevented. We saw some high visibility policing, but also some covert operations of officers in plain clothes responding to shoplifters as well. And it matters not whether that shoplifting is driven by need, a drug habit, or some sort of organised crime. Our job is to make sure that we bring the person to justice and then deal with matters from there. I mentioned in my presentation that Surrey Police hasn't in recent years been charging the number of offenders that you would wish to see. One of the ways in which we will increase the number of people who we charge is by renewing our focus on crimes such as shoplifting. There's also a benefit for new officers who need to learn the basics of crime investigation, because in responding to such offences, it means that our new officers get to hone their skills in arrest, investigation and prosecution, which will stand them in good stead throughout their career with us.
Thank you very much. Borough Commander, you and I have met with the bid manager a couple of times. I know there's some great work going on there. Can you talk a bit more about locally?
Yes, so the bid manager obviously covers Staines Town. So we've been very successful in our operations there, especially with PC Inder Singh, who is the town centre officer for that area. So he's been very good and very successful with some of the work we're there. But you're right, Staines Town can obviously sometimes feel like it gets all the focus because it has the largest town centre, it has the largest amount of retailers. But we recognise that there are other areas in Spelthorne. PC Amy Norman's been really successful with her work in Shepperton, say, for instance, a fairly small centre compared to Staines. However, it gets targeted, and the feelings of the shoplifting there can be much more intimately felt by the residents because they're seeing it on a much more regular basis, or feel like they're seeing it on a more regular basis. So she's done some really good work around not only setting up the business watch that we have there. So we have something similar to what we have with the bid, where we're talking all that time to the businesses themselves, but also they've done a number of operations there where just a few months ago we locked up 3 individuals for shoplifting, which were carrying out the most shoplifting in that area, which really had a big impact on the amount of shoplifting that was happening in Shepperton, say. And we're looking to replicate that in Ashford, which we recognise not only is antisocial behaviour a concern for the residents in Ashford, but there is that fear of that it goes along almost hand in hand, as the shoplifting goes hand in hand with the antisocial behaviour. So we're working hard there. With Ashford, we've got now 2 dedicated officers where there was previously only 1, and there is now also a dedicated PCSO, which again we're hoping to up once they get recruited to another PCSO. So they'll have much more visibility in the town centre, as well as working on some of the stuff that we've been successful with in Staines and Shepperton, and also looking at Sunbury Cross is another area that we're looking at as well.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much. Thank you for your questions so far. Please continue to put them in the chat. We've got about 20 minutes left and I'm keen to get through as many as possible. Christine has asked, can neighbourhood watch coordinators receive a regular notice of the crimes committed to enable them to keep members and neighbours informed? Now, we know that Neighbourhood Watch do a fantastic job right across the county, including in Spelthorne. I met with PC Singh and Neighbourhood Watch recently. It was a very good meeting. So how, I suppose, what is the best way of us making sure that we're staying in touch with neighbourhood watch groups, because we know how useful they are. They are often the community's eyes and ears and our eyes and ears there. So can you talk a bit about perhaps the work that you're doing with them and what we can do to make sure that they've got the tools they need?
Yeah, so we've been working with Martin Stillwell, who's not only the Surrey's neighbourhood coordinator, he's also the neighbourhood watch coordinator, currently heading up Spelthorne for us. And what we've done is not only looking to really push the idea of in Spelthorne trying to get more people involved in Neighbourhood Watch, but we recognise there's that desire for information. Yeah. Now, there are various sources such as In the Know online. You can find out the information around what's going on in your area, say for instance. But I know that the Neighbourhood Watch is specifically previously have received information from us, which was, I believe, was created by a person who is no longer with the organisation, they've retired. So what I've done is I've been speaking with our volunteer team, and we basically identified that the advert is actually out now, so I would welcome, for the person who's asked the question, there is an advert out there now to join Spelthorne Spelthorne policing team as a volunteer. With one of the civic roles I want them to be doing is creating these reports, because what we're working on with through the volunteer team, through Helen and the volunteer team, is creating a form that is fine. So we're sharing the information, but we're not sharing. Obviously, we've got restrictions on the amount of information we can share, but so that then we can get that regular for want of a better word, a newsletter, information letter out on a more regular basis, because we don't unfortunately have the ability to always be doing that report, but a volunteer who also knows the area, who may also hopefully be part of Neighbourhood Watch themselves and sort of understands what the Neighbourhood Watch wants, we can then be providing that for them on a regular basis.
Great, that's good, because I know they are a fantastic resource. Right across the county. I met with a fantastic group just before Christmas in Leyland with PC Singh and Sinead Mooney, who's the local county councillor down there, and really, really phenomenal work that they're doing. Ken has asked, and Chief Constable, this goes partly to the comments you've made earlier, but I wonder if we could just answer Ken's question. While willing to pay more for policing, what assurance can you give that the extra funds will go to fully operational officers?
Thank you. It's a very important question, and this is why I'm so determined that people understand our commitment to the plan which I've set out. The plan is very clear. It's about things such as crime prevention, thorough investigation, the relentless pursuit of criminals, and the tireless service of victims. We've committed to ensuring that we retain the number of officers whom we already have. I'm absolutely committed to make sure that whatever funds we get are set aside to ensure that they're spent to the very best possible effect in respect of those objectives. So that means making sure that we arrest suspects as swiftly as we possibly can, that we provide the very best services for victims to make sure that they're kept safe whilst an investigation progresses. It means ensuring that officers are funded to carry out diligent and thorough investigations. It means ensuring that our operations in our nighttime economy and in our major events are properly funded and resourced. All of those things, I could go on and on, are carried out by frontline police staff and police officers providing actual services to the public, which look after victims, pursue criminals, bring offenders to justice, prevent crime, and thereby keep Surrey safer, and we hope safer and safer and safer. So please rest assured I have no interest whatsoever in spending that money on any other endeavours than those which go to fighting crime and protect people, because I'm absolutely clear that that's what we are here to do.
Excellent, very clear, thank you, much appreciated. Nikki has asked a question which certainly feels very close to home for me and I'm sure for a lot of women who are watching. Nikki says, with the dark mornings and dark nights, what is being done to ensure lone women are safe commuting to and from work and using public transport? And I wonder if you could both comment, both sort of the work, Chief Constable, that you've been doing and have been really committed to in this area, but also the work, Borough Commander, that you're doing locally in Spelthorne.
Thank you. So I think it's important to frame this issue slightly more broadly, because whilst there is of course a risk posed to people on the way to and from work, albeit a relatively modest risk, thankfully, the greatest risk to our most vulnerable is often in their home. And that's why I must take the opportunity to restate our commitment to investigating crimes such as domestic abuse, because for many people, what should be the safest place, namely their home, is actually for them the most dangerous and terrifying place. And that goes for adult women in relationships, but also girls and boys who might be at risk from those who are there to care for them, not to pose a risk to them. But it's right also that we consider the risk posed to women in particular in public spaces. And one of the strands of the overall strategy for violence against women and girls is to identify those places where women feel least safe. And we're working to identify those within Surrey. And in the same way as we would in the past in respect of crimes such as burglary or violence or street robbery, think about how it is that we can work with partners to design out those offences and make people feel rather safer. It's also a good opportunity to mention the work that we're doing in relation to Operation Shield. Historically, we've tended to think of preventing crime in terms of how prospective victims need to change their behaviour. Operation Shield is very much about focusing not just on potential victims, but also on the behaviour of potential suspects. We use expert officers who are trained in behavioural detection to identify people who've travelled to the area for no decent reason and only because they intend to target the vulnerable. And then by picking those people out, we've been able to spot those who've travelled some considerable distance and might have a previous criminal history in relation to targeting the vulnerable, and then been able to deal with them. So that's an example of some of the initiatives that we've been carrying out to make sure not only that we're attending to the safety of people in their home, but also thinking about how it is that we make everyone, but particularly women and girls, safer in, for example, our nighttime economies. What I would say to those watching is if there are areas where you feel particularly unsafe, it's so important that that is reported. It really concerns me when I hear people say, well, there's no point in reporting it. There very much is, because yours might be the strand of intelligence which, put together with another piece of intelligence, is what we need to identify either that a place is unsafe or that a person poses a risk, and do something about that. So please do report anything which makes you feel unsafe or which causes you concern. We often talk about the most serious crimes, such as rape and serious violence, but we know that women in particular have to put up with a lot of crime which they really shouldn't have to contend with, notably public order offences, people saying things, whilst they're out, running, for example, which make them feel unsafe and demeaned. And it's equally important that those crimes are reported, and I'm determined that we bring people to justice for those as well. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to...
I would say also the street safe.
Yes, forgive me.
Obviously, is a really good way of doing that.
Yeah.
Use that whether you're a man or a woman, just go and talk about the area. But thinking about particularly locally, the safer streets, which is a different thing again, and the money that we've got through sort of my office and working with local council as well, and in particular the work that's gone on the underpass in Sunbury. Sunbury Cross has made a big difference. What else locally are you doing?
There's twofold really. I mean, first of all, just to reiterate what the Chief Constable says, the domestic home should be the safest area, and my expectation of my officers when they go to anything like that is long and gone are the days of it's just a domestic. The expectation is that if you commit these offences, you will be arrested for them. It's getting that mantra that we are going there and we're going to be arresting you. I'd like to thank the work that the domestic abuse teams do and the officers who go and respond to these first domestic incidents, because it's really hard work they're doing, and they're making really good inroads in regards to that. But on the safer street side of things, the Sunbury Cross, where obviously there's quite substantial money from that helped to turn Sunbury Cross underpass, which the local residents will know was dark and dingy into a much more well-lit location now, vastly improved CCTV, improved mirrors, so obviously when you're walking down to corners you can see if somebody's waiting for you behind the corner or something like that, but also going to have artwork from local teenagers in there, so there's some feeling of openness. We'll work with schools, with kids, with the youth to find ways that we can, first and foremost, we wanted to treat them as a child first. That's the first thing, is treat them as children first, and often a lot of antisocial behaviour can be a result of poor facilities for them to go elsewhere. Could be a poor home, they're trying to get out of their home, so there's a lot of other issues that we need to look at, and that's why partnership is key for me with regards to addressing long-term solutions for youth antisocial issues. So it's not just our YOs, it's not just us, it's also, you know, the work of our partners in helping that. Parents, it's a difficult one to answer, because obviously, yes, I would want every parent to be a good parent, but that's not always the case. So we do have ways of working, again, through social services mostly, to find ways to help those parents as well, because sometimes it is down to poor parenting, where there's a lack of understanding maybe sometimes with regards to potentially that child's needs. But it can also be parents trying their best, but they're really struggling. And sometimes it's just a way of finding them for them, or getting for them the right resources, the right partners to help them with their child who may be struggling for a variety of reasons beyond just they're a naughty child, because there often is something else there beyond just that.
Thank you. And that's really important. You talk about partnerships. You've both talked about partnerships as such an important part of the work. And I know that particularly Ellie Thompson, who's my Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner and oversees a lot of the youth work, works very closely with schools and with the County Council and with others, making sure that young people are kept away from that, particularly those who are at danger of exclusion. We know that school exclusion can play a large part in that as well. Is there anything, Chief Constable?
Well, yes. I mean, I think as a county, we certainly want to get better at sharing our data in such a way that it enables us more easily to identify the young people who might be at risk, or indeed pose a risk of violence or antisocial behaviour, and also those places which are at greater risk, so we can focus our problem-solving resources there. Often, I think we get the question the wrong way around, in that we ask, why is it that people commit crime and antisocial behaviour, whereas it can be instructive to think about, why is it that most people don't? And the reason most young people don't is because they're in stable homes, they're at school, they have something to focus on, something to aim for, and something positive to do, whether at home, school or elsewhere. So I think by working in partnership to encourage and support parents and our partners to create all of those conditions in which young people can flourish, the better off ultimately we can be. But it's really important that all of us, police, schools, parents and partners, take our responsibility, and to recognise that there are some young people who've been exposed to things which do affect them in such a way that their behaviour then isn't perhaps as we would wish it to be. And our job is to make sure that we can identify those people before their behaviour gets too bad, and ensure they're put back on the right path. My final point would be in respect of the term antisocial behaviour. Often in antisocial behaviour there can be some very serious crimes of criminal damage and harassment, and I really encourage people to make sure therefore that those are reported, because antisocial behaviour is not a minor issue. There is often criminality in there which needs to be addressed, and people shouldn't have to put up with.
I'm going to sneak in one quick question, actually, because we've had one more from Danielle on Facebook that I think is very relevant, which is around dispersal orders and whether they're working. Danielle says that some years ago they were used effectively to stop a gang of local youths. Have things changed with their use since then?
Not on Spelthorne. as far as I'm aware. We have used and we do use dispersal orders following or on the night of the issues of Halloween in Ashford, which I know was raised at the last one. A dispersal order was put in place. A further dispersal order was put in place on the fireworks night, and through that and other work that my officers did, there was not the level of issue that we had or incident that we had in Ashford. I have used it in other forms. I have used it to address where we've had reports. Just prior to Christmas, we had reports of a potential large-scale disorganised or unorganised car meet that was potentially going to be happening in Shepperton. And we used that to put the dispersal order in place. And not only do we put the dispersal order in place, I also make sure that it is highly advertised through our social media. So that has an impact, hopefully, on those who want to come to that area, know that that's going to be there. But also making sure the resources are then put in place in that area as well. Because it's only so good having that power in place. I also have to have the officers there to be able to enforce it, and that does happen. So where there is information that there is going to be, or there is issues that would be of a significant public order that would require a dispersal order, I will use them and have used them, and I will continue to use them.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who has joined us. We have run ever so slightly over. Thank you to both Tim de Meyer and to Matt Walton, to the team here, and in particular to Suzanne, who has done an excellent job of keeping up with us as well and signing for you all. Have a very good evening, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.